Sometimes in sports, a single moment can mean everything. One swing of the bat, one pitch, one split second that changes lives forever. October 23rd, 1993, bottom of the ninth inning, Game 6 of the World Series. The Toronto Blue Jays are down by 1 run to the Philadelphia Phillies. Joe Carter steps up to the plate with 2 runners on base. The crowd at SkyDome is on their feet, 50,000 people holding their breath. The Blue Jays are just 3 outs away from losing this game, but they're also just 1 swing away from winning it all. Nobody knew it then, but they were about to watch one of the greatest moments in baseball history, the kind of moment kids dream about in their backyard, the kind of moment that turns players into legends. What happened next? Well, that's why we're here. This is the story of Joe Carter, the Blue Jays, and the home run that people still talk about 30 years later. A story about how one man, with just 1 swing, changed the game forever. Tom Cheek said it best that night, "Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life." You know, before Joe Carter became a baseball hero in Toronto, he was just a kid from Oklahoma City, growing up with 6 brothers and sisters. His dad worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. But Joe had something special. Baseball wasn't just a game for him, it was his way out. He wasn't always the star we remember today. Carter bounced around the league for years. Chicago, Cleveland, San Diego. Good player? Sure, but nobody was calling him a legend yet. Then 1991 came around, and the Blue Jays took a chance on him. That's when things started to get interesting. Toronto in the early 90s was different. Baseball was huge. The SkyDome was packed every night. And the Blue Jays? They weren't just Canada's team. They were becoming one of the best teams in baseball, period. In 1992, they did something no Canadian team had ever done before. They won the World Series. But winning once wasn't enough. The next year, they came back even stronger. They signed Paul Molitor, a future Hall of Famer, added pitcher Dave Stewart. The team won 95 games that season, and suddenly they were back in the World Series, this time against the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies weren't supposed to be there. Nobody picked them to make it this far. But they were tough. Long hair, dirty uniforms, playing hard every night. They called themselves Macho Row. Their closer, Mitch Williams, they called him Wild Thing, because nobody, not even he, knew where his pitches were going. By Game 6, the Blue Jays were ahead in the series, 3-2, 1 win away from back-to-back championships. But with 3 outs left in the game, they were losing 6-5. The crowd was nervous, 50,000 people wondering if they'd have to wait another day to celebrate. That's when Rickey Henderson drew a walk. Then Paul Molitor got a hit. And suddenly, Joe Carter was walking to the plate. The Blue Jays were down by 1, but they had 2 runners on base. 2 outs away from losing, but also 1 swing away from winning it all. Mitch Williams stood on the mound, doing his usual rock and sway. Carter dug into the batter's box. The count went to 2-2. Nobody in the stadium sat down. Nobody could even breathe. What happened next? Well, that's the moment that changed everything. It's funny how time slows down in big moments. Ask Joe Carter about that 2-2 pitch from Mitch Williams, and he'll tell you every detail, like it happened yesterday. The pitch came in low, a slider, not a great pitch, the kind Williams had been struggling with all series. Carter was ready. His swing was quick, smooth, perfect. The sound off the bat, everyone in the stadium knew. This ball was going somewhere. Left field. Going, gone. The roar in SkyDome was like nothing anyone had ever heard before. The building was shaking. Carter started jumping before he even touched first base. His teammates poured out of the dugout. Grown men were crying in the stands. Think about it. Only one other time in baseball history had a World Series ended on a home run. Bill Mazeroski did it in 1960. Now here was Joe Carter, running around the bases, jumping up and down like a little kid. The radio call from Tom Cheek became famous right away. "Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life." He was right. Nobody has hit a bigger one in Canada since. The Phillies just stood there, stunned. Mitch Williams walked off the field with his head down. He knew that pitch would follow him forever. The Blue Jays were jumping all over each other at home plate, waiting for Joe to finish his victory lap around the bases. Carter says he doesn't remember touching second or third base. He just remembers the noise, the joy, his teammates waiting for him. When he jumped on home plate, he wasn't just winning a game, he was making history. The Blue Jays were World Series champions again. Back-to-back titles. In the locker room later, champagne everywhere, Carter tried to explain what it felt like. "I was floating," he said, "like I wasn't even touching the ground." Paul Molitor, who'd seen everything in baseball, just shook his head and said, "We knew right away. This was history." Even the Phillies had to respect it. Their manager, Jim Fregosi, said it's simple. That's baseball. Sometimes heroes are made in one swing. You know what's crazy? 30 years later, Canadian kids who weren't even born yet know about that home run. They've seen the video a million times. They copy Carter's celebration in their backyards. That's what makes baseball special. One moment can live forever. You want to know how big that home run was? Walk around Toronto today, mention Joe Carter to any baseball fan, and watch their face light up. They'll tell you exactly where they were that night. It wasn't just a home run. It wasn't just a championship. It was bigger than that. Before the Blue Jays won those World Series, some people still thought of baseball as America's game. But that home run? That changed everything in Canada. Kids who watched that moment grew up wanting to be baseball players. Guys like Joey Votto from Toronto, who was 10 years old when Carter hit that home run. Now he's had his own amazing career in the big leagues. The Blue Jays haven't won a World Series since then. Baseball's changed a lot. The SkyDome is called Rogers Center now. But every time the Blue Jays make the playoffs, people talk about Joe Carter. They show that home run on TV, the same clips, the same celebration, the same joy. Carter comes back to Toronto sometimes. People still stop him on the street. They tell him their stories, where they were, who they hugged, how loud they screamed. One guy told Carter he named his son Joe because of that home run. That's what baseball does. It connects people, creates memories that last forever. You know what's funny? Carter hit 396 home runs in his career. He was a really good player for a long time. But everyone remembers just that one swing, one moment, 3 seconds that changed his life, changed Toronto, changed baseball in Canada forever. The game's moved on. Baseball's different now. But some things stay the same. Every kid who picks up a bat still has that dream. Bottom of the ninth, World Series, 2 runners on, down by one swing to change everything. Joe Carter lived that dream, made it real, and 30 years later, we still can't stop watching it, talking about it, living it again and again. That's what makes baseball magic. Sometimes the biggest moments come down to the simplest things. One pitcher, one batter, one pitch, one swing. Touch 'em all, Joe. You really never did hit a bigger home run in your life.